Does everything have a bright side to it? Of course. It doesn't always outweigh the negatives, but everything has a bright side to it. This makes happiness a choice. And here we say that the discipline of being happy is the ultimate discipline. With that said, welcome to the Ultimate Discipline Podcast, where we meet with people who are practitioners of this exact discipline, and we hear their cool stories of cultivating happiness through challenges in their life. I am your host, Sean Greenspan. Let's get to it. Darren, good morning.
It's a
pleasure to connect with you today. Thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, me too. You know, it was funny when we were kind of getting ready for this, and I was looking through all of your past work with like Zumba and everything that you were doing previously on social. I just love how you built like a life around movement, not just fitness, like movement in general. Was that just kind of innate from you from when you were born, or how'd that come about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've always been in movement, fitness, and exercise. And kind of throughout my journey, at school and college, I would play sport. I'm from South Africa, so rugby is the religion in South Africa. Like that's what you play growing up. And I was always one of the smaller guys. And when you play rugby or you look at the guys that play football, I mean, these are big guys. And so you've got to be pretty resilient. You've got to know how to move to get yourself out of tough situations. And you've also got to be prepared to take hard knocks. And so I've always been very physically active. My father instilled that in me. And I played a ton of sports. But as I've kind of gone through this journey in the fitness industry, and I got into fitness at the age of, I was training when I was 12, 13 years old. I started my first kind of job in fitness at the age of 15, which was fortunate because my sister was dating the fitness manager of the gym up the road. So he gave me a job, which was great. And I started working with kids on a kid circuit, taught me a lot of patience, and then kind of progressed, got more excited about fitness, and then started studying and learning about the body and movement. But as I've kind of gone through that journey, my perspectives have shifted over time. When you start and you think about the discipline of fitness and movements, when you're young, it's about aesthetics and how you look. Everyone wants to have big muscles and be ripped and have a six pack. And I've gone through these phases. I get obsessed about certain things.
Yeah.
And so, I got obsessed about aesthetics, and I trained hard, and I, worked out with friends. And then I, kind of got into that mode of, let me think about how I can, challenge myself in a bigger way. And so I got into Krav Maga, which is an Israeli style of martial arts. And I pushed myself for 3 years, and I would, train against guys that were much younger and obviously a lot more agile than I was. And it was a good challenge for me. And then I got into CrossFit, and then I got into Spartan races, and I traveled the country dragging my kids and my wife with me. And we just headed out and, did these Spartan races. And then from there got into golf, which is obviously a lot more balanced. But my philosophy around movement has changed fundamentally to the point now where I look at movement as being, or not having a restriction to movement, and being healthy and physically active to move. And for me, that means playing with my kids, playing golf, going to ride a bike, doing stuff that my body allows me to do without the restriction that a lot of people get as they start to get older. So that's kind of where I believe my philosophy is now. It could change over time, but it does put things into perspective as you go through these schools of hard knocks, doing all of these very physically challenging and demanding activities. Your perspective changes.
Yeah, perspective is really pretty interesting. And it's funny because I was actually watching or listening to a podcast this morning that talks about the importance of movement, right? And how people need to play that long game, like you're saying. And it really, I mean, of course, like especially for males, building strength and like, looking good is kind of like what people are looking for. But I'm 28 years old. I'm kind of going through that right now, just because. So I was a football player, and lifting heavy was very functional, right?
Right.
For playing sports. And I guess the big thing that I'm seeing now is I really enjoy. Now, what I do enjoy is I think I really enjoy lifting heavy, and I find that it's a good mental test, right? It's
Right.
great on what it does to your psyche. It's a good tax on the nervous system for sure. It, of course, builds more muscle, so it's going to keep the metabolism up, like we're trying to do. But and then I also think, it keeps you young in some ways, but it used to be like my primary focus, but now it's totally secondary, if not tertiary or even below that, because, like I used to, right, spend 90 to an hour and 20 minutes or 120 minutes like on chest. And then next day was
Right.
back. And
Right.
now it's kind of like, so today was 60, 75 minutes of just upper body. Like,
Right.
so I'm really lifting upper body once, lower body once. The other days, I'm trying to focus more on like mobility,
Hmm.
agility, balance,
Right.
things like that. So I definitely see where you're coming from. Did you have like a specific turning point, Darren, that made you change? Like, was it an injury or anything, or is it just more kind of your perception?
It was it definitely was a turning point. I when I was doing Krav Maga, because I was challenged against these younger guys, I would kick very high, I kick very hard, and it's demanding. So I broke my toe, and my big toe at that, which is probably not the toe you want to break, because a big toe is pretty much involved in everything. So I broke my big toe. But I think the turning point for me was where I realized that I was actually not bulletproof. Was the first time I went skiing. And my wife and I had always wanted to go skiing with the kids. Well, Jackie is more into the beach, so for her, she'd rather go to Mexico than go to the snow. But we went skiing for the first time in North Carolina. No one really does a whole lot of skiing in North Carolina. You would go to Colorado or you go to the East Coast, but I went to North Carolina with the kids, and I tried to learn how to ski on YouTube. Not a good idea. Didn't work out very well. Fell, broke my collarbone. It's the first kind of serious injury, aside from injuries playing sports. I'd broken my collarbone playing rugby and concussions and all the stuff that went with playing at that level. But this was the first time that I was kind of in my mid 30s and I'd broken something and I was immobile. And so that was a big learning curve for me, because you kind of think that when you go through those experiences, your body is not as resilient as you think it is. And it teaches you a lot about recovery. It's the stuff that we as fitness professionals talk to our clients all the time, right? Or you talk to a friend. If somebody hurts themselves, you're like, listen, this is what you need to do to recover. But as a fitness professional, somebody that's very active, it's a very different set of circumstances, right? So for me, having broken my collarbone, the first thing I did was I put a call through to a friend of mine who's a sports scientist. And I said, listen, I was dumb, tried to learn how to ski on YouTube, didn't work, broke my collarbone. What do I do? And he said, and this was great advice, was listen to your body. Listen to your body and understand that your body needs time to recover, but also be conscious of what your body's telling you, which was very powerful. And I've used that experience, that turning point, through all of the sports that I've done since then, whether it's Spartan races or CrossFit or it's Krav Maga, or even playing golf, where you get rotational issues and shoulder issues and hip issues. And so that was a really interesting experience, because immediately my body wanted to heal itself. But the professionals, the doctors said, immobilize, don't move that part of your body. And so I would put myself in a harness, in a strap. I didn't mobilize, or do any movements until I went to see the doctor when I got back from North Carolina. And his first reaction to me was, don't move it for 6 weeks. Now, if anybody that's listening knows, when someone tells you not to move something, or if you've injured something, all that's going to happen is that part of the body is going to just, atrophy. It's going to shrink. It's going to tighten. It's going to become, very, very challenging to move. And so I immediately immobilized. But having spoken to my friend who's a sports scientist and having that kind of at the back of my mind, you've got to listen to your body. My body was telling me to move. So that's what I did. And I slowly started to develop a range of motion. Clearly, you get different breaks of your collarbone. Some of them need surgery. Mine didn't, luckily. It was at the end. And it was just aesthetic. I've just got a bump. But my body was saying, move. And so I slowly started moving my arm over days. And I would do rotational things, and I would do rotator cuff things. And I would, I took a vitamin water, and I would use that as the resistance. And I would slowly develop a range of motion. And
to
I
the
did
point
that
of pain, or how did you
no,
know?
I always stayed kind of within a range, but it felt unbelievable because my body wanted to move. And I did that for 6 weeks. And I stopped using the strap, and I, did what I needed to do, and I developed full range of motion. And my body was kind of relearning and healing itself. After 6 weeks, I went to my orthopedic surgeon, the doctor that had told me not to move my arm. And I walked in there and I put the strap on and I walked in there.
Of
But
course,
by that stage, right, because I got it, because he told me to. By that stage, I'm doing full range of motion. I'm lifting things above my head, and I'm doing all the stuff that needs to be done because my body told me to do it. And I walked in there and he said, your shoulder's healing amazing. See, if you listened to me, you immobilized it, you kept it immobile for 6 weeks, and look how well it's improved. It's the best, the best surgical advice I could have given you was not to do anything that's going to be strenuous. I said, thank you very much. He said, come back in 6 weeks. I said, thank you. Took the thing off, walked out the door, never went back again. Because you have the clinical diagnosis and the clinical way of treating something, but then also you have this ability to understand the body and movement. Now, clearly, because I understand the body and movement, I listened to my body and I worked within my range of motion. But that was a turning point for me where I said, I'm not bulletproof anymore. I've got to be careful of how I do things. I've got to listen to my body rather than just beasting ourselves. Like you said, if it's powerlifting or weightlifting or strength training or doing a challenge, running an Ironman or training for a half marathon or whatever the case is, you've got to listen to your body and know how far you can push yourself. And that was a big eye opener for me because, growing up and playing the sports that I did at the level that I did, you generally think you're bulletproof and you can do whatever you want to do.
Oh yeah.
And, as you start to get older, those challenging sports catch up on you, and you've got to listen to your body.
Yeah, that's awesome. You clearly have good intuition, I mean, and I think that comes from a fitness background, but I think you can develop that. Like, even if you didn't come from a fitness background, just maybe you have to get quiet, or maybe you have to like learn about, whatever body part you injured. But if you're looking to heal something, I mean, like you said, really, really trying to just listen to your body and do what's needed. I had just like a little wake up recently. I was surfing in Hawaii, and I have I don't know if you could see, it's only a little scar now, but I just crushed my knee on a rock. And I mean, and it had coral in there. So luckily it was nothing structural, but it was a nasty cut. They gave me a hip to ankle cast, and they said, you need to be in this for 2 to 3 weeks while that heals, because the cut came down and it scraped the tendon a little. I mean, so it was swollen, whatever. And
totally,
I don't know. I mean, and they said ice it, right? And I'm like, if I don't move it and ice it, that just sounds like it's never ever gonna get blood and heal. So what I found, and my girlfriend, she's in the fitness space, and she really helped me with this. I put a lot of icy hot type cream on it, that's gonna bring blood to it, and I massaged it. I mean, there was no way I was bending it for the first few days. I was massaging it. And then I did I pushed myself almost in a workout mindset, but with the brace on. I'm gonna walk, and it was one of those that you can change the angle. So I was trying to do that, and obviously wasn't as severe as a broken collarbone, but it's interesting how blood flow and then also the mental aspect of it, of trying to train and get better. Because it's it's an active mindset. You're I'm trying to do something to make myself better versus just cross your fingers and hope.
Right. Well, and I think that's where people get stuck, is that they listen to clinical diagnosis, and most of the time when it's a structural thing, makes perfect sense. You've got to do certain things, but at the same time, I think we blindly kind of go wherever we're told to go. And the big takeaway for me, and speaking to other, athletes and fitness professionals is you've got to really listen to your body and understand what your body's telling you. And you've got to use some common thought around blood flow and about recovery and about mobilization, because all that happened for me was that my bicep got incredibly sore and very tight. My tricep got incredibly sore. I couldn't do anything with that joint, despite the fact that my collarbone was the one which suffered the trauma. Everything else was hurting. Same with your knee. You find that you get referred pain, you get imbalances. All of a sudden, your low back starts hurting on the other side because you're compensating. So it really is about listening to your body and then having that intuition. But I do think one of the things, Sean, is the mindset, like the attitude that comes with this. And whether it's in business or it's in sport, having a very strong kind of mental attitude towards challenges, I think, is absolutely critical. And that was, I think, one of the biggest switches for me. Whenever I take on a new challenge, whether it's a work challenge or a physical challenge, I need to accept kind of the guidelines, the rules, the constraints of what I'm trying to do, but then also look at the future and the vision of what that's going to look like on the other side. So when I related to the injury that I had, within seconds of breaking my collarbone, literally lying on the slope in North Carolina with what I felt was a bump, knowing the numbness and the pain, having experienced injury before, lying there, my immediate reaction was, I have two choices. I can feel sorry for myself, or I can suck it up and just get on with it. Because from this point onwards, I'm healing. From this point onwards, I'm healing. And that switch, we were on vacation with my kids, and my wife walked towards me just after I'd come out of kind of the clinic on the slopes. And she looked at me, she's like, "You're an idiot." And I go, "Yes, you can't learn to ski on YouTube." And her reaction was, "Okay, well, that's our vacation done. Like, what are we going to do now?" And I'd already made that switch in my mind. And I was like, "No way, we're going to double down. Let's go." We had the best vacation. We drove all over North Carolina. We had a blast. We had so much fun because I'd made that mental switch that this is now my new normal. I'm healing from here going forward. And I think that's a very important mental lesson that people need to think about, both in sport and in business. Whatever challenge comes your way, you've got two choices. You can fight it, but if there's too much water coming rushing at you, you've got to kind of go with it, but then make it your own. And I think that's where the mindset switch happens. And if you can do that, then you become resilient. And I think society nowadays needs to really embrace resilience, because we're getting hit from every angle with every challenge. And if you're resilient and you're nimble and quick on your feet, you can capitalize on that.
That's now we're getting into some deep stuff that I love. That's first of all, that's beautiful. And the fact that it happened. Okay. So the fact that it happened in real time, right? You laid there, you hurt yourself. You probably were like, "Fuck, my collarbone," and then you're like, "All right, this is reality." I don't think that happened by accident because you're lucky and were given a great mind. I think, with my limited knowledge of your life and your background, that you embracing challenge growing up as an athlete and understanding, you don't have to be an athlete. It could be music, it could be writing, painting, but understanding, hey, there's a task, a challenge in front of me. I'm going to stay optimistic and positive throughout this whole process until it's completed to a good quality. And I'm going to say discipline with continuing to do it, right? That gets you to a mindset state that can then work in real time, right? It's just like if you got an email right now, "Hey, you lost a big corporate client at OutFit," right?
Right.
It's like, okay, it's good. I lost them. Now what?
Right.
I could try to get them back. I can try to, you figure out what's next. And you can do it in like a calm demeanor. You can handle your emotions, and control them. And it was pretty cool to hear you talking about like resisting what's going on in life, because it's funny. I'm a dreamer. I'm someone who believes in manifestation. So that might be like, to some people it might be like, "Oh, like he has his head in the clouds," right? Like he thinks everything's just going to work out. Everything's just fine. I like to think that way. And then instead of worrying, like The worst thing you could have done was like spent the whole time worrying you were going to hurt your collarbone while skiing and then never hurt it. That'd probably be even worse. You had a great vacation out of that and a life lesson. But
Right.
instead, you had this good attitude that everything's going to work out. Sometimes it doesn't. You fell and broke collarbone, and then you're like, "This is reality. What's the best reality from here?" I mean, it's just beautiful. You can't control everything. You're never going to be able to. So I think if you
No,
don't have the good attitude,
you'll live in a constant state of anxiety, right? If you're trying to control the environment around you, and sometimes these things are uncontrollable when it's whether it's in business or in your personal life. I mean, yes, I think inherently people are good people, right? People are good.
definitely.
Of course, you get people that are criminals or people that have skewed ethics or people that don't have any integrity, and that's just how it is. But generally, people want to do good for one another and people want to do good for themselves. But in terms of how you approach life and the attitude that you have, that's a conscious decision, I think. And I thrive, my personality, I thrive in chaos. Some people hate chaos. I love it. The more disorganized, and by nature, I'm a fixer. I want to fix things, whether it's in the fitness industry, working for the companies that I worked for, or dealing with personal issues, or trying to help my kids with, school homework or situations that they're going through. Um, my nature is I want to try and find a solution. And sometimes that solution is right in front of you, and sometimes you've got to, speak to people that know a lot more than you to try and find the solution.
Yeah.
And that's I think that comes with a certain level of self-awareness. What are my shortcomings? What don't I know, and who do I need to speak to find ways to do things? And in business, it's critical. Like I always say, in any role that I've been in, I want to surround myself with amazing people. I want to surround myself with people that get stuff done. I always say, hire the right people, shit gets done. Like that's how it is. And and that's the attitude that I've always had when it comes to any challenge that I have. If I can find the right people and empower them to do what they need to do without micromanaging them because they're at a level that they know what they need to do, then shit happens. It gets done and we continue to grow and we can compound and we can do better and better and better. And so I think it really is just having the right attitude, the right mindset, but being solution orientated. And it's not a natural thing. I read a book a long time ago about people's traits, and one of the qualities they spoke about was customer service. We're in customer service, right? When you think about hospitality, you think about restaurants, there's this culture of customer service. But this book that I read said 15% of people have a natural inclination towards customer service. They just are those type of people where customer service is everything for them. The rest of the people in those industries need to be trained in customer service. They don't have it naturally in them. They might have a
Mhm.
bias or a skew. And I think that's the reality as you think about, the work that you do or the roles that we play. There are some things that we know and there are some things that we have to learn. And you can be a chameleon and you can kind of shift and change, but there are times where you put the wrong people in the wrong positions. Shit's not going to get done. And you've got to find the right people. You've got to surround yourself with the right people to make things happen. And that's something that I've always maintained in whichever role I've been in. I've got to surround myself with great people. And I think I don't know who it was that said it, but it wasn't me. You need to hire fast and fire faster.
I
And
heard that
that's
quote for the first time this week,
right.
actually.
There you go. And I totally agree with it. I think it's right. We just, especially nowadays with people, post COVID, want to work, don't really want to work, don't want to put the effort in, want a 4-day week, want a 3-day week, want to work from home. You've got to hire the right people, shit gets done. That's how it is.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely a note I'm going to take from here. I always like to take tidbits from people. And you brought up mindset a few
Yeah.
times. So, without, I want to tell you where I kind of think about like the mind coming in. So we have this world where it's driven by, science is like a very underlying principle to quite a lot, right?
Right.
Technology and the way that, even movement, right? Like science is a really foundational aspect of life. And obviously the brain and the mind is like the next thing for science to conquer, if you will, right?
Mhm.
Like there's not they know a lot about it, but they don't know more about it.
Sure.
And, I always look at it like the mind is like that I don't even know what you would call it, like the X factor, right? Like you
Right.
were talking about like healing your collarbone.
Yep.
The way that I look at it is your collarbone healed fast because on one side, right? Oh, like we could map this out on paper. Well, Darren's generally healthy, so he's going to heal 10% faster. He's going to sleep on, have a good diet, so he's going to heal 15% faster now. He's going to do these arm movements, which if we ask tons of professionals, from the clinical side, the sports science side, everything, that we agree that that's going to bring more blood flow, and now we're going to heal 30% faster. But then there's this X factor, the mind, where no one can measure what you're doing, how you're thinking, and no one can measure the direct impact because we can't measure the inputs, we can't measure the output. I have a very, very strong, feeling that like the mindset that you brought to it, again, the fact that you're going to be active, right? I know what my body needs. I'm going to do what my body needs with my shoulder. I know I'm going to get better. Like I'm positive I'm going to get better. This is going to work because it's what my body needs. Like that just attitude. I accept this, right? I'm not resisting it because we already know resisting is going to create tension in the body, just not going to be good for healing. I feel like the X factor of the mind is just so powerful. I don't know, like maybe not related to your collarbone, or maybe, but have you ever kind of like thought about that, like as this like additional potential resource that we have? Because we all talk about the power of the mind, but we don't really know how it works.
I think it's massive, and I think that we talk about it, and some people have really kind of delved into and maximized it, but the mind is the extra catalyst that takes people from good to great, from great to phenomenal. And when you look at any of these elite athletes, the reality is that like I said, I'm passionate about golf. The difference between a person that shoots 85 and a professional that shoots 70 or 72 or 65, honestly, is the mindset. And yes, there's the skill and technique that goes into it, but it's the mindset that allows them to get to that point, because all of the other stuff can be taught. It's the same way that Roger Bannister, who was the first person to run a 4-minute mile, sub 4-minute mile, there were plenty of people that tried before him, but the minute he broke that 4-minute barrier, tons of people afterwards have broken it, because the mind clicked over and said, this actually is possible. And I think both in
Isn't that
sport,
amazing?
it's crazy, but it was literally, I believe, within a short period of time of him getting over that 4-minute mile, getting under that 4-minute mile, that the record started to break. And now I think it's 3:40 something, but it's the same,
That's
for
fast.
right. It's crazy.
I'm a runner, and me and Matt are trying to run a sub 5-minute mile. And like, I think we're both pretty serious runners. And
Right.
we're also like, he's 6'1", I'm 6'2", so like long legs, because that helps a lot. That's under 4 minutes is fast.
It's nuts. But every time when you look at any barrier in sport, which I think is a great learning for anyone, the first person that ran sub 10 second 100 meters, or the first person that was able to pole vault a certain height, or high jump a certain height, or long jump a certain height. Like, we constantly, as humans, we break these barriers and we prove to ourselves that it's actually possible, because we live in these constraints, right? Both in personal life and in business and in sport, we live in these boxes. And I think the mind is the absolute catalyst. When you look at some of the toughest challenges out there, whether it's climbing 14 peaks, which is or climbing El Capitan without ropes, or getting up Everest, or doing these crazy challenges and feats that we overcome. And it's not just about the CrossFitter or the elite athlete. It's about somebody that has a degenerative condition, or a musculoskeletal issue, or somebody that has a mental challenge, and they overcome those hurdles. And the thing I think that we need to realize, that everybody has challenges, Your mindset can help you overcome those, but my challenges are not yours, and yours are not Matt's. And that's where I think people get stuck, because we're constantly as a society comparing ourselves to others. And that's a problem. But social media amplifies that challenge, because we're putting things out all the time.
Everyone's putting the best thing they do.
The best. But the reality is your best took you 3 days to master and 65 different cuts. And like, it was just to get to your best, you failed a ton of times. And I think it's a great lesson for us. And I always say in our business, I'm like, we have to try and fail and try and fail, because the more we fail, the better we become at finding the solution. Once we find the solution, we double down, we triple down, but you have to be comfortable to fail. And it's the same in sport, and it's the same in your personal life. Like, you've got to accept the fact that you're going to make mistakes and stuff's going to happen, and you just got to be able to deal with it. But I think, to come back to the original point, the mind is the supercharger that's going to get you to the next level, if you choose to get to the next level. But at the same time, it can be your biggest barrier to breaking through to something great.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I have like this back and forth in my brain. So I told you, I like ultra marathons, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing is heavy lifting, we talked about. Besides the fact that heavy lifting's fun, hey, if you're angry, go lift a lot of heavy weight. You won't be angry anymore. Totally. It's fun. There's tons of benefits to it. I think it's just such a different mental challenge, right? But, I think like I mentioned this before, I think it's great for the metabolism, like all sorts of stuff, but it absolutely is wear and tear on the body. Sure. Similar to like running, once you get into these 50, 100 plus mile runs, like it's a lot on the body. Now, the benefits that it gives you mentally, I wonder if they outweigh that, or like, maybe like this, because, and the reason I say it, so let's take El Capitan without a rope. This is a good example. So if you just looked, again, like taking the mind X factor out of it, you took X's and O's, it's stupid, because 100%. A bug gets in your eye and you sneeze, and that's you're not dead. Even in your control, and you're dead, right? And like, people think like you fall from 3,000 feet. No. You die if you fall from 50 feet. Like, correct. But so like, if you think about the evolution that this boy, like these people, when they were that climb, like without ropes, they probably used to like hang on monkey bars and jump from furniture. And then maybe if they were lucky, rock climb, like harnessed in a gym as a kid. Then as they got older, maybe like started rock climbing outside, and then maybe started bouldering, and then maybe started, like free climbing. And then it just gets bigger and bigger, because it sharpens the mind more. It does. I'll tell you, like, I think the best experience I've had with my mind in a while was the last few miles of the last 50 miler I did. Yeah. Was like, and man, I was broken. Like my back and knees were just torched. But it was just like, I feel like in that 10-hour run, I experienced like 6 months of life, and then also have stuff that you can bring on forever. So like, you just have lessons that you can carry with you forever. So I always think about that. Like, again, the mind, like, it's not like I want to be able to measure this stuff, but it would be cool if you could, because like the benefit, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't imagine now living, not have had done that. But then of course, like there's very, clear evidence that it does certain things that aren't necessarily ideal.
Right. But then also you do these crazy things, your paradigm shifts. Because for me, I've done a number of half marathons, and in my head, when I started doing them, it was foolish. Like, why would you want to run 13 miles? Like, what's the point? And then at the same time, I would put doubts in my mind. I'm shorter, I'm stockier, I'm not a natural runner, because you play with those doubts. You're not a natural runner. You're not a natural runner. You're not a natural runner. And once I broke through that barrier and I did the half marathon, I'm like, I could maybe I could do a full marathon, which I haven't ever committed to doing, to be honest with you. But when I did my first ever Spartan race, it was a beast. It's called a beast. It's a half marathon with 35 obstacles. Half marathon with 35 obstacles. And I had done a couple of half marathons before, and I trained for the beast because there's a lot of hanging stuff and carrying stuff. And so you've got to be strong for it. But I absolutely loved every second. I dominated that experience for me, challenging myself against myself. And I walked away saying, I could do this time and time again. My brain had switched over from, do I think I could run a half marathon, to give me 35 obstacles in the way of a half marathon and I'll crush every one, because I'd made that decision that it was something that I could do. So the mind is incredibly powerful, both for positive and negative. And it's something that I'm trying to train, my kids on without getting too heavy with them. It's like, what do you think you can do? Okay, let's go and try this. Let's see what you can do. If your paradigm is here, how do we shift it so that you can do so much more?
I applaud you for, first of all, that's an awesome story, but I applaud you for challenging yourself to not get too heavy with them.
Oh yeah.
Being a kid's fun, man. And once you lose it, you don't get it back. Well, that's
Totally.
actually not true. You can get it back. But
yeah,
generally, most people don't. And there's, ignorance is bliss. Absolutely. And it just keeps you lighter. But I like the way you said that. Like, I've thought about, I don't have, children. I have thought about that though, like raising a kid to be like a disciplined beast, to be a mental, just, I don't even know, just be so mentally strong. But it's like,
it's so tough, like, man.
It's tough to like do it without just like robbing them of their adolescence.
It's so tough.
I think a challenge, like you said, like what I think what, and I'm surely not going to tell you how to parent. I'm more getting excited about this topic, but I think like what could be a fun way to do it is like when they dream, right? I want to be a professional athlete. You can just kind of like poke that a little. What's that going to take, right? Well, all these athletes are big and strong. Oh, so you need to be big and strong, right? Like, okay, what's that going to take? Like, I think, stuff like that could be fun. Like, I think dreaming itself, just having dreams, gets you halfway there. I really do. And I mean, really having these dreams, not like I want $1 million. Like I am going to have $1 million and I'm going to put 25% of that back into the community I grew up in. Like having a clear vision and dream. But man, that's a challenging one. Let me know how that goes.
It's a work in progress, man. It's a constant day in and day out, and just trying to support them. I think what you're saying is right. I also think a big thing that we need to remember as we get older is that play is very important. We lose the ability to play, and kind of seeing the world through the eyes of my kids, trying not to make things too heavy, getting them to understand that they've got to have some fun, but there are times where they need to knuckle down and get things, done for them, whether it's schoolwork or projects. It's a constant challenge, but it's a blast. It's so much fun, man. It really is.
Man, play. I'm looking at the clock to see we just have a few minutes here, but play is an interesting one because it does bring you as an adult back to being a kid. It's creating, and like you said, I think if you can move, like tying it way back to the beginning, if you can move freely without pain, if you can do things like run a Spartan race and be in such good shape that it's fun, right? Versus or such good shape physically and mentally, right? That like, totally. Hey, if my legs hurt, that's fine because like that's part of it. That's just
correct.
But that's really beautiful. I'll tell you this short little story, but yesterday I'm training for this 50K and it's 31 miles. I'm trying to run it pretty fast. So like the last one I ran, I completed, but it was fairly slow. And so I was like, I want to try to run this one quickly. So I went out yesterday no cell phone, no watch, nothing. I had a granola bar in my left hand and a bottle of water in my right hand. And I ran just through the woods, through these trails. I've never been in this specific forest. I've never been on these trails. I had no watch, nothing. I had no idea how long it was. I ended up running for 3 hours and 40 minutes. And I came back and it felt like I just like lost track of time on a hike, or lost track of time laying at the beach. Like obviously not physically laying at the beach, but like, it felt like I just played like with, no care about time. I ended up having a meeting like 10 minutes after I got home because I didn't know how long I was out there. But I love that. And, we'll have to maybe do a part 2 and talk about all the playing you get to do with OutFit training here.
For sure. Listen, I think you kind of got into that cathartic state, right? You just kind of lost yourself. And that for me is some of the best experiences. You have these moments where you can sit back and appreciate. And just thinking through a couple of those for me, I mean, one of my favorite things was a run that I did in New York. Left my hotel, ran through Central Park, pouring with rain, had an absolute blast. It was the best. And I got back to the hotel and people just looked at me like I was crazy because it was a torrential downpour. But that moment was just, like I said, cathartic. It was healing. It was amazing. It was awesome. It was everything you ever wanted it to be. It was that and more. And it just happened in that kind of microcosm of craziness in Manhattan. And it's about finding those opportunities to kind of lose yourself a little bit and get out there and do things. But I think my attitude to kind of movement in life is about not having those restrictions. And I see way too many guys that are debilitated, injured, they have issues, they have big stomachs, they have back issues, they have neck issues, pain issues, and they're not able to play. And I think that's where, if I can walk away with a mindset of play, both as an adult and working with your kids as well, life can be quite different, right? You can have a whole lot of fun doing it. And play means different things to different people. Every evening, I take my 13-year-old, we get on our bikes and ride around the neighborhood, probably for 45 minutes or an hour. It's not exercise. We talk all the time. And it's the most amazing way for me to just connect. And he opens up and he talks and says whatever he wants to say. That's my 13-year-old. Yeah. My 16-year-old is very different. He's not going to get on the bike. He's not going to ride around with me and talk with me. But if I sit with him while he's connected in his room with his computer screens all over the place, and I engage in conversation with him, it's a different level of conversation. And the result is the same connection. And so you've got to understand those relationships around you and how you can maximize those. And I find it's on their terms. It's not on my terms, especially when you're dealing with kids. It's on their terms. Yeah. Because, you don't know this yet, but when you do have kids, my wife will get the kids from school and go, "How was your day?" "Fine." And that's it. Like there's no conversation because they don't want to have that conversation at that time. But then she'll take one of them for a walk and they'll open up and have these conversations. Yeah, so it definitely is about the relationships and about play and about engaging. But ultimately, it really is, how we grow as we get older. Because it's not downhill. I've always said
uphill.
It's like I am excited getting older. I know that sounds weird, but I'm super pumped. Why? Because I watch my kids getting older. I see the challenges that they're going through. I help them with those challenges. And I've got another 50, 60, 70 years to go. Like, let's do this thing. This is a long game. This is 9 innings, 46 years old. I'm bottom of the third. Like I've got a long way to go and there's a ton of cool stuff coming my way. You can have that attitude or you can be like, I'm 46 and I'm, I don't have much time and my back's sore and my legs are sore and I don't have this and I don't have that.
But it comes back to the discipline, man, that you put in to keep your mind and your body sharp. I will say the word, everybody, today is play. Everyone go play. Prioritize play. Darren, I'll see you June 21st in Miami. We're going to play outside, work out. That's going to be a fun night. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time. I know everyone's busy, especially yourself. So you have a lot going on. I appreciate you connecting with me here, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Appreciate it, Sean. Thank you so much. This was great. Just awesome to have conversations about important things and just connect. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.